Okay, I'm going to explain why you should never, ever, 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 ever pull fire alarms in public unless there is a real fire. Number one, it's illegal. Number two, you might scare people. And number three, the fire department will come. And I mean it. They will come. If you pull the fire alarm in my school, you can get suspended from school. Or even expelled for doing that. If you pull the fire alarm in any public building without a real fire, you can get fined or even arrested for reporting a false alarm, which is what you do not want. And when I was younger, there were kids that did stuff like this and pulled the fire alarm as a prank, like, choop, not funny. And they got in a lot of trouble for pulling that fire alarm as a prank. Yeah. Pulling fire alarms is a very serious felony and can get you into a lot of trouble if there's no fire. If there's a fire, pull the fire alarm. If you have permission to do it during a fire drill, then you can do it then. Or if you're testing the fire alarm system, you can do it. Or if you have your own fire alarm pull station, you can do it, but don't pull fire alarms for a joke or prank, okay? And also, don't ever open fire alarm pull stations. Like, if you're in a restaurant or something like that and you find a key and you go to the fire alarm pull station and open it up to see what's inside of the fire alarm pull station, you can't do that. That's tampering. You cannot tamper with them. You cannot pull them. Absolutely not. And there's videos on YouTube where people pull fire alarms on purpose, and that's not good. So, if you walk into a building and see these things, don't pull it unless there's a real fire. If you see these things in your school, you don't pull them unless there's a fire. So, I would not pull it unless there's a real fire, because I know better not to pull the fire alarm without a real fire. But unfortunately, there are some kids out there that don't know better and pull the fire alarm as a prank and like, shoot, Like I said, you are in big trouble for doing that. I mean, there's unfortunately kids out there that treat the fire alarm like a toy. And it's not. It's a life safety device. It is not a toy. If they have their own fire alarm in their own house, then they can play with it whenever they want. But if they're doing it with a fire alarm in a public building, they can't do that. They'll get in a lot of trouble. You could go to jail for doing this. Here in my state, it's a class 1 misdemeanor if you pull that fire alarm without a real fire. If you pull the fire alarm in school in my state, then you can get expelled from school. And I think in all 50 states you can get expelled from school if you pull the fire alarm without a fire in the school. You can't pull fire alarms in school or any public place. If you walk into a church and you see a fire alarm pole station in that church, don't pull it. Or if you walk into a bar or a restaurant or a store, a shopping mall, and you see one of these things in those places, do not pull it unless there's a real fire. Or if you're in a hotel and you see these things in a hotel, do not pull the fire alarm in the hotel unless there's a real fire. Yeah, I went through that situation. One time, we were staying in a hotel in Florida, a Holiday Inn, and a prankster pulled the fire alarm like, choop, and and they got a lot of trouble for that. And places like Jill's house, where kids with special needs spend the weekend away from their parents, and you see fire alarm pole stations in places like that, you can't pull them. You can't pull fire alarms anywhere unless there's a real fire. If you see a fire alarm pole station in a recreation center, don't pull it unless there's a real fire. If you see fire alarm pole stations anywhere, don't pull it unless there's a real fire. If you have your own fire alarm pole station in your house, then you can pull it whenever you want. But if you're doing it with a pole station in public, you can't do that. You only pull fire alarms if there's a real fire, or if you have permission to do it during a fire drill in school, or if you have permission to test the fire alarm system, or if you have your own fire alarm pole station. If you pull the fire alarm without a fire, the fire department will have to waste their time responding to that false alarm while there could be a real fire somewhere else. And those people will die because the fire department can't get to them in time because some prankster decided to pull the fire alarm. This is not funny. It's not funny to pull it whatsoever. And the fire alarm is definitely not a toy. It is only for emergencies. Pulling the fire alarm without a fire in the building is the same as calling 911 with no emergency at all. You don't prank call 911 and you don't pull fire alarms without a real fire. So, if kids think it's funny to pull the fire alarm in school, they're dead wrong. I mean, fire alarms are never ever something to mess around with, and they're only meant to be used for fires. And the reason why we put stopper covers over fire alarm pole stations in public areas where there can be a lot of people tampering with the fire alarm is so we do not have that much false alarms. And with the stopper cover, there's an alarm in the stopper that sounds when you lift the cover up, and a lot of attention is drawn to that area, and the person will be caught pulling the fire alarm. And in most buildings nowadays, you have security cameras, so they can figure out who pulled the fire alarm right away. You can't get away with it. I mean, on April Fool's Day, there are literally kids that pull the fire alarm in school for a prank because it's April Fool's Day. Not cool at all. I never did that, and I never will, because I'm smart, not dumb. Only dumb people pull fire alarms for jokes or pranks. Smart people know better not to do stuff like this. Yeah, the fire alarm is only to be pulled if there's a real fire in the building. Bye.